French Papers time now here on France 24. James Green with me in the studio as ever. James, fascinating piece you pulled out actually in Le Croix to do with the Tunisian migrants coming all the way up through Lampedusa and into Paris.
That's right. On the day that European interior ministers are meeting to discuss border controls in Europe, Le Croix has met several Tunisians who've made their way up to Paris via Lampedusa and elsewhere. And what their day-to-day reality is like, these are, I suppose, some of them are illegal immigrants, and they followed two guys by the name of Hathem and Ayman, who have been here for about 2 or 3 weeks. They followed them for over the course of 1 week to see what their day-to-day reality is like. They've been given accommodation by an association called France Terre d'Asile, France Country of Asylum. And so for Ayman, he is holed up in that accommodation in the 19th arrondissement of Paris. And they describe a dilemma. Should he go out? You know, it doesn't provide food at this accommodation. He doesn't have any money, so he's wondering how he's going to find food during the course of the day. He's worried that if he leaves the accommodation, he'll be stopped by police and could be deported. He describes how a friend of his, Omar, hadn't eaten for 3 days, collapsed on the metro and split his head open, actually. So that's one situation described. Then for Haitham, they describe one night how he went to a nightclub up around the Blanche area of Paris. He tells journalists that he hopes perhaps to meet a woman and settle down in Europe. He knows a friend who married a young German woman and some years later returned to Tunisia to buy up the bar where he had once worked. And he says he's aware that marriage is perhaps his only chance of getting permanent residency. So in various different ways, they describe quite a desperate situation for these migrants in Paris.
Yeah, desperate stories. Fascinating stuff, though. Yes, Libération, some political shenanigans,
yes,
manoeuvrings.
Indeed. Now, I'll just translate the headline first. Mr. Wauquiez, I am not the cancer of society. Mm-hmm. Now, that is a reference to the Minister for European Affairs, who in the last couple of days made controversial statements about the dole in France, saying it should be capped at 75% of the minimum wage and that people should be made to work on a voluntary basis for 5 hours a week. He also said that welfare is the cancer of society. Controversial statements, indeed, and they spoke to several people who are on welfare, one such as Lionel, 44-year-old guy, who said, "We're simply surviving. It's hardly a windfall." So obviously defending their situation. The editorial is essentially a letter to Laurent Wauquiez, saying that while wealth tax is currently being lightened, there are reforms at the moment underway, such declarations are simply revolting. Perhaps the dole system could be improved, says Libération, but how can we imagine speaking to you, Mr. Wauquiez, when your vocabulary, using such as words as cancer, simply disqualifies you? So they're extremely tough on Laurent Wauquiez over his declarations in the last day or two about the dole.
And Le Figaro, they're being tough on Dominique Strauss-Kahn.
That's right. The Greek crisis complicates Dominique Strauss-Kahn's candidacy. This is the head of the IMF, one of the hopefuls for the Socialist Party nod for next year's presidential election. Now, he, as the head of the IMF, could see his role as, or his hopeful, what would you say, his candidacy being weakened somewhat because the IMF is going in perhaps to give a second bailout to Greece, which doesn't exactly portray him in a positive left-leaning light in France. They also on the front page have Woody Allen on the red carpet with Rachel McAdams. This before the showing of Midnight in Paris down in Cannes. So that's making the front page as well this morning.
And Francois, they're also talking about DSK as well, aren't they?
There he is, DSK as he's known here. The catastrophic scenario. Now, they return to what is known as Porsche Gate. On the 28th of April rather, he got into a very swanky-looking Porsche, and it was basically a catastrophic image for a man who's going to try to cast himself as the I suppose, hopeful for the left in France. And the irony of this is that the Porsche belonged to Ramzi Kiroun, who is a communications strategist for Dominique Strauss-Kahn, the guy who is hoping to cast him as a sort of a man of the left, and now he is responsible for perhaps the worst possible image that Dominique Strauss-Kahn could have conjured up.
Excellent stuff. Yeah. He should have gotten one of those free bicycles around Paris.
Absolutely.
Finally, really interesting piece about Gaddafi and Bin Laden linking him.
That's right. This is in Slate.fr. It's an article written by Daniel Vernet, former editor of Le Monde. Should Gaddafi be killed like Bin Laden? Now, he's not suggesting that. He's looking at the scenarios that would, the scenario basically, and says that there would be way too many obstacles. But he finishes with this sentence: Gaddafi is not officially in the line of fire, but if a drone were to accidentally drop a bomb on him, ... So perhaps pointing to what some people might be thinking. I don't know.
All right, we shall wait and see. James, thank you very much. James here with the French Papers.